Hola, bon dia. Carl Munson here with the Good Morning Portugal show and podcast. Season 4 of the Good Morning Portugal podcast. And as you can see from my backdrop there, stay healthy, stay positive, and stay close to the ground is my thought right now, really, in response to the coronavirus. And I was saying in the Facebook group that goes with the Good Morning Portugal page this morning, my thoughts really, I think it'll be errant. I just want to read to you what I wrote just before I came on air, because I've got a lot of thoughts going around in my head about it at the moment, as I'm sure a lot of people have. And I managed to kind of distill it and express it in a fairly succinct way. And if you watch this live stream, you'll know I can ramble a bit occasionally. But that's the basic message. The headline is what we're about is staying healthy, staying positive, and staying close to the ground as a strategy for dealing with the coronavirus as it manifests itself in Portugal and obviously globally. I think there are at least 2 confirmed cases in Portugal. And I'm really not in the business of scaremongering, but I think it's important to be in the business of being prepared and to consider what's going on and to not avoid it and to not get too upset or worried or concerned about it, to take practical and positive action, more about the hack than the flack, if I can turn it into a bit of a soundbite. So what I said on Portuguese Positive News, which is our group, I mean, do get involved and discuss issues there. Anything to do with living in Portugal as an expat or an explorer. But I've said in the group, it would be errant, I think, not to address the coronavirus phenomenon in Portugal and also its global implications. So we do take a positive approach, but not a Pollyanna positive approach. I think it's really important to embrace life as it is, warts and all its challenges and difficulties. And yes, it can be hideous at times, obviously. Anyone who's fairly long in the tooth will attest to that life is made of ups and downs and challenges and so on. And sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not so great. And we're facing quite a challenging time at the moment, but we can face it in quite an upbeat and positive way, I think, in a practical way. So this is season 4, funnily enough, of the Good Morning Portugal podcast. Season 1 was when I first started, and that's when I was living around Lisbon and full of the joys of being freshly in the country, honeymoon, if you like. Season 2 was when I moved to the central Portugal, more to a central location, and carried on with small brief podcasts about language and culture and so on. And they were generally 5 minutes long. And I think this is episode 201 now. But the ones in season 2 were a lot shorter and briefer and just sort of punchy ways of catching up with the culture and sharing my messages with people. Season 3, thanks to Paul at Amigos near Alvázora, said you need to do an expat radio show, and so season 3 brought it back out of the cupboard, out of the closet, and it was what I've been doing up until yesterday. And season 4 really is this whole context of life in the times of corona and the coronavirus and what that might mean. And what I'm really interested in is life after corona, because I think this is going to have an impact. Our system. Actually, let me go back to what I posted in the Facebook group this morning. So starting today, season 4 of the Good Morning Portugal show and podcast, we will look at the realities, possibilities, and practicalities of what's looking like a pandemic. And it's interesting, pandemic sounds pretty dramatic. Pandemic also has as an anagram of panic dem, but certainly, panic can be found in pandemic. And it's really important to get that to get the balance right. To not be panicking, to be practical, but to be aware and not to stick your head in the sand, because arguably, that is a metaphor for our times, isn't it? We're not facing up to what's going on around us, like, la 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 la. And one brilliant image I've always remembered is like, doing your shoelace up just inside your front door, and there's a battering ram as you bent over doing up your shoelace. The battering ram of society, of reality is about to come through. And this is what I've been thinking for quite a long time. I'm saying here, going back to what I've posted this morning, let's work together on this, sharing our fears about what might happen. Let's not bury stuff that we are concerned about, and let's share our fantasies about what could happen, life after Corona, because that's the really amazing thing. I think the amazing possibility and opportunity here. And this thing is unfolding in front of our eyes, okay? And I'm going to do my best to give you the angle on it in Portugal from a practical point of view, but also talk about what we might do as a response to the current situation, but also how we might approach a different kind of world thereafter. So I've long thought our current system, unsustainable as it is, would come apart. And I didn't think it would be a virus that would initiate the sort of change that I anticipated would be coming to us collectively. And I also think we have the wherewithal, imagination, and a responsibility to transform the current broken system that we have, and the situation that we have that is, just doesn't work for so many people around the world and only honors a few people. And I think we can transform it into a new kind of society which honors and supports the many rather than the few. It's not going to be easy. I don't think it's going to be easy, and it's going to be difficult and challenging. And if the worst case scenarios, like 10% of the population get the virus, and all of the breakdowns in supply chains and hospitalization, all the logistics that will mobilize to 10% contagion, it's going to call us to be pretty amazing and resourceful, and at the same time as saying it's not going to be easy, I think we can do it. I think we need to work together. That is what's being called for here. And I had a long conversation with somebody you might be familiar with, Will Thompson, yesterday. Will gave me half an hour or so of his time. I wanted to interview him about his awareness and position and what he's been saying about the coronavirus. He's an epidemiologist by education, and he has a very I was going to say a grim view, so you could say sort of grimly realistic, but so much of it is speculation. It has to be said, these people are, many people, it's ranging from, on the one hand, it's just like the flu, and it's going to pass, through to this could be the most disruptive thing for a long time, and it could be truly changing us and transformational as a possibility, and hideous as well. So we don't know where we're going to be, and clearly governments around the world are organizing things. But certainly I would say, don't just leave it to the government. Take some responsibility yourself for the situation. The governments do what governments do, obviously, and they work at a very great level. And I'm not sure, it's possible for governments to care for people on an individual basis. You have to do that for yourself and your family. Now, it's not going to be easy, but I honestly believe we can do it if we work together. And what's really important to say, and why am I saying this on, Good Morning Portugal, is because I think Portugal is a great place in which to bring about the new vision for humanity, for human life. I've always thought that. I've been drawn to come to Portugal over 10 years ago, and I've managed to come now, and I still think this could be an amazing place. Portugal survived, as many places did, the financial crash of 2008. And I think this will be a similar thing. Lots of people I speak to, this isn't something that, there's a lot of talk on the news about spreading panic and so on. It could be a lot worse. A lot of people I speak to believe that there is going to be a financial crash of some kind again. That's just a matter of historical record. Financial systems, economic systems cannot continue to grow and grow. And again, it will be errant and foolish not to consider what could be in its place or how to be prepared in the event of the cycles of economic boom and bust. That's just how economics seems to work. And we are due a dip, let's put it that way. 2008 was pretty grim for a lot of people. And something like that is going to happen again. And it might be that the coronavirus is what's going to bring that about. And it made a severe impact, didn't it, on the financial markets in the last few days. So people are talking like that. So that's where I'm positioning myself, sort of editorial, if you like, for the Good Morning Portugal page live stream, the show that we do in the podcast that we put out. And I would hope that it is a resource to you for if you're in a similar wavelength. I'm not really interested in arguments about this. You can get arguments everywhere in social media. What I'm interested in is working together with people who share a similar view, and I think there are a lot of you around who are interested in that. So my key message is, what we're going to look at is how to stay healthy, how to stay positive, and how to stay close to the ground, because I think that's easier in Portugal, because that, I think, is our freedom ultimately is to stay close to the ground in all that means. I was going to say stay healthy, stay positive, and stay put. I think that's good advice, but clearly, some people might not be in the place they want to stay put in, if that makes sense. Some people will be wanting to make arrangements to move away from their current situation, which is maybe not so resilient or resourceful, and that's why a lot of people are thinking about Portugal, and that's why I think I should continue to talk about what sort of properties and possibilities are available to people. And I've got a fabulous off-grid property, which is right, bang on for what we're talking about here, or what I'm talking about here. I would like to say a little bit more about the coronavirus and a bit more of a context setting for me, really, before we go to the Casa do Dia. The Casa do Dia is a cracking off-grid property today, but I wanted to say more about the context, if you like, of why I'm interested in bringing more awareness, information, and possibility around the coronavirus to the Good Morning Portugal show and podcast. I think it's important that we stay on top of this. I think it's going to be a big thing for humanity. And just as a separate resource for you, I would like to commend to you, and I want to speak to, like I spoke to Will Thompson yesterday, I think is amazing authority on the subject. And by the way, his recommendations, are vitamin C, wash your hands, don't go out, stay away from people, self-isolate. And where that's not practical or possible, where you live in a community, get to know people in the community, stock up on dried goods and food. The supply systems may be affected. If they're not, it's no problem. But if they are, you want, I was talking to Will about, dried goods, flour. He wants to be able to bake bread and share that in his community. Now is the time to build your social capital, of course, as well. And that's another thing that's really possible in Portugal and cultural, that, you be part of the locality. And I think that's a really good investment, is to get to know people around you. And, that's how I want to live anyway. But I think this might bring it on. This might bring it on for people, that we're less self-interested, selfish, self-interested, self-focused, and more community-focused. That might be one of the silver linings of this, of the corona cloud, if you like. And as well as vitamin C, sunshine, fresh air, and higher standards of hygiene, no touching and kissing people at the moment, and isolation. Will also recommends the Peak Prosperity Guy, Chris Martinson, very good resource. He talks about, I think, John Robertson. Forgive me, I will add this somewhere else, but there's a very calm speaker on the subject who kind of gives you the information, which is, serious, but not in a panicky kind of way. So Will's got some, friend up Will on Facebook. Will's got some really useful stuff to say. He does come across as very angry and upset, and it's hard to get the nuance on social media. But I think it's just his frustration in how unseriously this is being taken, and how, from his education in epidemiology, he can see how this will spread, and that we need to be better prepared than we currently are. That's Will's take on it, I think. If I've expressed you correctly there, Will. I know there are many other aspects to it, but I think that's the basic message: is that we could be taking this a little more seriously and practically. Not panic, not anxiety or worry, although those will be parts of the mix as well. And, we can deal with that by talking about it and sharing, where we are with these things. But, let's get serious, let's get practical. And as I say, as I'm adding to this, let's think about the situation beyond what's going to happen after Corona. So let me share this current screen with you that I'm looking at, which is another resource that you might like to consider. This is Campfire Convention, a guy called Pete Lawrence, who I think is up for me interviewing him. He's a great guy, very sort of community focused, part of the festival scene in the UK. And here he's put together some fantastic resources, collecting information, resources connected with how the planet is likely to change in the wake of the coronavirus. He's positioning himself in a similar place to me. The pandemic is already affecting the world order in ways that will shake up all our lives. A BBC correspondent pronounced yesterday, this was written on the 26th of February, so he's way ahead of the curve here. A BBC correspondent pronounced yesterday that globalization is ending overnight. That that's an interesting proposition, is it not? Globalization ending overnight. I can see that, though. I can see what's being said there, albeit, that's quite a dramatic way of putting it, but that's what you've got to do when you're in the journalism business. Interconnections, financial, cultural, social, and physical trade are all shifting on an almost daily basis. And we can see that that's come true in the last week. The impact of multinationals and our financial system will potentially be huge. We may soon get to the stage where people won't be able to gather. It's happening already. And there's a lot of threats of that, aren't there, with sports events, even the Olympics. The combination of this and the climate emergency are the catalyst for vast and rapid global change on many levels. This is one of those rare times when we're unarguably all in this together. Too true. This resource will attempt to gather articles of note, whether based around the medical evidence or the virus impact on the world and its interconnections, globalization, international cooperation, and all other outcomes. Good morning to you, Gareth. Thanks for joining me this morning. And here they are, lots of links to great articles that cover it from all the aspects, including, the statistics, some articles of note, as he says, the World Health Organization, prosperity that Will Thompson recommends. I think that's really good. Then you go to something like James Wesley Rawls' Practical Coronavirus Preparation. That's bloody terrifying, frankly. But, there's some useful information as well. You've got to listen to it through the filter of, I see, that's an American prepper talking about the doomsday scenario, but there's still something to learn from that. And there we go, Dr. John Campbell. That's the guy who Will recommends. Yes, that was right. Dr. John Campbell, very useful blog, tracing world trends, pushing for proactivity rather than reactivity. That hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? Proactivity rather than reactivity. So here we are, the Good Morning Portugal show, Portuguese proactivity, when you're taking your own situation into your own community's hands and your family's hands on a practical level. That's what we're about. And that's how I'm framing season 4 of the Good Morning Portugal podcast. So I hope that's useful to you. Campfire Convention /project /coronavirus resources. And I'll put the link to that with this podcast mention of those resources. And please do stay in touch. Be in the Portuguese Positive News group about where you're at with this, what your vision is for after the virus. Like I said, that's the really important thing here, how we imagine life to be after this situation, how we're going to cope with it during the situation, but how we'd like it to be after the situation, because it's likely, as this introduction just said, it's shaking things up. It may be the catalyst that will bring on the change. What are we going to call it? The transformation of how we live. We're living in an unsustainable and crazy way that only serves a few people. Most of us would like to live in a way that honors more people and is more sane and sensible, better mental health, better quality of life for many more people. The system we have is unsustainable. It doesn't deliver very well. Let's create a new one. And it might be that the coronavirus is our prompt to do that. Okay. This is the Good Morning Portugal show, podcast, live stream, coming at you on Facebook Live at the moment, and split into little handy podcasts, over 200 episodes and over 7,000 downloads now. And we're going now to our YouTube feature, which is the Casa del Dia.